this is Gila. As someone who grew up in Britain during the 1970s, listening to stories from my parents about what growing up was like for them during World War II, and the utter determination of the British people, encouraged by various tremendous speeches from the Prime Minister Winston Churchill, that they were always going to win and bring down the Nazi tyranny, I took for granted the right to express my opinions openly and to engage in respectful but profound and sometimes heated arguments with other people who disagreed. For personal reasons, I found that I needed to leave Britain nearly 20 years ago now and make my home in Israel instead. At the time it was very difficult and there was much that I missed from the country that I loved. But today, as I live in a land where the right to free speech is still essentially protected, I'm realising more and more what I have actually gained and what Britain has sadly already lost. Allowing in millions of immigrants with very different cultural, social and religious norms from the native population was frankly not the brightest of ideas. It was undoubtedly for political motives, and also with a declining birth rate, to find a way of bringing in enough tax revenue to support the growing number of pensioners after national insurance contributions, instead of being put aside for this purpose, were simply being used by successive governments in the same way as income tax. Instead of insisting that all New Britons should respect our own traditional way of life and continuing freedoms, legislation such as hate crime laws, which may have been well meant but actually were not well constructed, have made supposed criminals out of various people simply doing what I took for granted when I was growing up: expressing an opinion. And already there are a number of local councils in Britain taking on the frankly outrageous modern Islamophobia definition. While, of course, respecting the rights of all British people to practice whatever religion they choose or none at all, in truth there is a great deal to criticise in Islam as an ideology regarding the treatment of non-Muslims, and indeed, thanks to modern scholarship, its supposed early history, which is not supported at all by real historical facts from the 7th century. Forbidding the totally legitimate criticism of Islamic ideology and various hateful verses frankly preaching contempt towards non-Muslims contained within the Quran and Hadith is an important step towards the political agenda contained within its ideology to make Islam supreme, to give far better rights to Muslims over non-Muslims, and to outlaw freedom of speech and our hard-earned human rights. Be in no doubt that is ultimately the real agenda here. Ask Brigitte Gabriel what can happen when Muslims become the majority population, as happened in our own country of Lebanon. As for the Online Safety Bill, which is set to be passed into law very shortly, this is another draconian piece of legislation with woolly definitions that will lead to more good people being turned overnight into supposed criminals for daring to express their opinions or even actual facts, simply because someone else may feel or say they feel insulted by another person's free speech. There should be no right to not feel insulted by someone else's opinions. This is the heart of free speech. Actively inciting violence is the bar for going beyond free speech, and sadly too many of those people who actually do incite real violence against other people who do not share their views are allowed to get away with it, while the softer targets of ordinary Britons who simply express an opinion, say stating clear biological facts regarding gender, or who want to pray peacefully too near an abortion clinic, are scandalously persecuted by police. And only the other day, Dame Caroline Dinenage wrote an appalling letter to Rumble, asking them to take away the right of Russell Brand to make a living by closing down his account. They refused, totally appropriately. Whatever your personal opinion about Mr. Brand, simply making allegations against him is not grounds to deny him his voice online or his ability to make a living. There is an important presumption of innocence until or unless proven guilty in a fair court of law. Nowadays, Mr. Brand is speaking eloquently against the establishment and for human rights, including freedom of speech, which suggests a rather darker motive at play here to try to shut him down. Because personally I no longer live in Britain, I am thankful not to be subject to these growing ridiculous and untenable invasions of human rights, especially freedom of speech. But I'm one person with a small channel and with just one voice. I truly believe there is a real war going on here that too many people have perhaps not even realised is happening against our hard-earned human rights and freedoms in the West. While this war is largely in cyberspace and there are usually and thankfully no physical weapons involved, I truly believe that unless enough Britons stand up now, peacefully but strongly and persistently, to reclaim our hard-won human rights, especially freedom of speech, to restore the British spirit of Churchill in fighting tyranny wherever it is found, and to leave our MPs and other officials in no doubt whatsoever that we will not tolerate the denial of our rights as human beings to live our lives as we choose while respecting the rights of everyone else to do the same, and to say what we think openly and freely, then sadly all our hard-earned human rights will, I believe, soon disappear altogether. Thank you so much for listening. You're welcome to post any part of this talk of mine on any other channel promoting freedom and human rights. Have a great day and support freedom, especially freedom of speech.